So I actually came back to school at Durham College as a mature student. I was in my early to middle 20s, and I signed up for the computer programming and analysis or analyst, I can't remember what it was called, program. And throughout that time, I was there with a lot of people that were younger than I was, and I think that my professors maybe took note of what might have been seen as a mature attitude and awareness of business and how I tried to help my peers understand requirements and how we serve business, because that's what we talk about in software. And then after a few years working out in the wild after I graduated writing software, my mentors, Bill Marlowe and Kevin Doherty, saw something in me that made them want to give me a chance at teaching, and so they gave me that they made that opportunity available, and got permission from my job to have some flex hours, and I taught my first introduction to databases course with 7 students. So a very nice easing into it thing, and really, really quickly, I fell in love with the atmosphere, the goals of what it is to help people learn. Um, what else? I mean, the workplace culture. I came into a team that I was already familiar with because they were my professors, but also just I'd never seen a team that worked so well together and collaborated and was so supportive. And I was coming from a worksite wellness company, and so those things had become very valuable to me. And there it was at Durham. I saw it in my peers, and so I caught the bug, I guess you could say. So I saw Durham being a place that I could feel a belonging in, and then I just enjoyed the work and I enjoyed interacting with the students. And then those moments that came where I helped people learn things and realized that, like, wow, like I helped someone actually do something like this. This is really cool. So those were just so rewarding in a way that I'd never felt before, that I decided after that first semester that that's the direction I wanted to go in. Like, I'd grown up doing IT stuff my whole life. It was what I lived and breathed, and that was really an awakening moment to me, that where I do best really is engaging with people and helping people sort of grow their awareness around sort of whatever content they want to learn. And I just chased it down. So I shifted my career path away from being a developer, started taking on more part-time contracts, and did that dance for a few years. And while doing that, attended university and achieved an undergrad and a master of education. And because I just wanted to get good at it. And now I'm in my 11th or 12th year or something, and I've been coordinating the program I graduated from for the last 5 years. And I just am in love with this job, and I love the people that I work with, and I love just everything that I started off loving. I still really, really enjoy, and I'm really excited to have this as what I do for a living, and hopefully what I do for a living into the many years to come. I don't really describe myself as a teacher to people. I sort of see myself more as a coach than a teacher, in that I coach people into learning new ways of thinking and looking at problems, because that's really the gist of what I help people learn is how to understand problems that we can develop IT solutions for, leading them to designing IT solutions. So yeah, coach. My preferred sort of way is to provide a mostly flipped classroom, and I say mostly because it's not flipped by definition, but it's a flip model where I put a great amount of effort into developing robust and very clear materials posted online, and then summarized and reviewed in class, with the majority of my time, or our scheduled class time, reserved for working on activities and outstanding assessments where I can be there to provide guidance as necessary, right? And in this way, I really try to facilitate sort of the unique experience that each student needs, right? Because you're going to have those students that are going to be able to read the textbook and get it, and they don't really need a whole lot of your help, maybe just a quick look. And then everyone in between, that student that maybe doesn't read so quickly and has trouble with the resources and needs a little bit more hands-on. By going about it in this way, I can sort of provide the support that each individual needs in what I think is the most effective way and most time efficient kind of way. So also just generally, just being very, very supportive, understanding, and almost nurturing of healthy living habits, I guess, that support stronger learner potential, you might describe it as. I try to, there's the content, and then I'm trying to get students to absorb content and then apply it. And In doing that and sort of helping them get into those scenarios, I'm also trying to promote mindfulness and organization and planning and developing personal accountability and personal strategies and things like that. And while those things aren't really like part of the content of the courses or even the EESs necessarily, I find that many of my students are arriving without those really well fleshed out or even thought about. And I use the content and the experience here as another vehicle to sort of coach them into, oh, if I, plan my week or plan my day, I have a higher chance of meeting the objectives that I need to meet and getting things done. And then that's going to reduce my overall stress and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of a holistic approach, you could say, where I try and help them to consider the whole picture that they're in while also telling them, like, this is what a database looks like and this is what a thing looks like and this is how we ask good questions and stuff like that. So a holistic approach, I guess. So this has changed recently. At the beginning of this pandemic, I took a series of traits that I was using prior and I tossed them in the garbage. Traits like, and these were traits that were present in my personal life and reflected ways that I was taught and the like. So traits like sarcasm, playful deprecation, bookended with self-deprecation, doesn't work. A stern persona when holding people accountable, expressions of disbelief that people aren't prepared for class or didn't make use of formative feedback time available. I was trying to utilize methods that others had used on me with varying results, which I was already well aware of how effective they were. Um, but I'm just not that kind of person. I don't really want to be sarcastic with people, and I don't know really how to use. I mean, there's no real good way to use deprecating humor, frankly. I don't think anymore. And I think that those traits, if anything, are the most effective way that you can isolate a student from you, the professor, and the community of learning that you're trying to facilitate and trying to foster in this group of students that you have for just 14 weeks, right? And the last thing I want to do is give people any sort of sense of being pushed away. I want to make them feel like they're being drawn in. So these days, very much because of the pandemic and what I would attribute to a mind shift in trying to be just more sensitive to everything that people are going through. So again, that sort of holistic look at each individual. These days, I try very hard to make sure that I'm seeing each student for where they're coming from and who they are in the current context of their life, because that context has everything to do with how prepared they are to organize or hold themselves accountable or just show up to class and the like. Um, Accountability is still something that I espouse to and require of them. Like, I'm not just like, oh, whatever, do whatever. Right? I still hold due dates and take them seriously, but I go about it with a much more supportive tone and actions that make it clear that I'm here to help them, not make them feel any lesser because they aren't performing at that moment. I was kind of taught that way in many situations, and I know that many people still teach that way, and I just don't think it works, particularly with more recent generations. For whatever reason, with more recent generations, it just seems to turn people away, and they don't feel safe or secure or even interested in attending class or connecting with you or reaching out for help because in their experience, that's only going to make them feel bad. They feel like their value isn't there. And that's the opposite effect of what we're trying to achieve, right? We're trying to get people in. It just turns people away from you. And you know how our outward actions are really only reflections of who we are inside. I started asking myself, like, who am I inside if the way that I'm trying to support people was making them afraid to approach me? And then looking at that, I just didn't like what I saw. So I get my students to engage in learning by regularly communicating this is a safe place to make mistakes. The reason you're here is to make mistakes and build upon those mistakes. And I am here to help you see where your strengths are. And I'm here to help you see where you need to build strengths. And that's the point. And I need you to, or I want you to feel like this is the place that you can come to get that insight and to have those conversations. And then at the same time, one of my expectations of my class is that everybody else in the room has a similar mindset. We're all here to help each other grow, and any behavior that doesn't push all of us in that direction really isn't welcome. And it seems to be working. always reminding students that they're in a safe and supportive environment where the whole point is to experiment, try, fail, and build on our failures, right? Like I just said. And that each of us in the room has a responsibility to nurture that effort in themselves and one another. So I encourage them to encourage and support each other in appropriate ways. And then there's just, the typical banter. I didn't really realize this until in a stop, start, continue, a few people mentioned it, but I start class on, like, I start the meeting on the hour, and then I start class at 10 after as scheduled. In that first 10 minutes, I just kind of hang out and I drink my coffee and, just welcome everybody in the classroom by name as they come in and maybe tell them a little story about what's happened in my life or see if I can ask them what's happened in their lives, follow up on a conversation from the previous week. And uh, usually it's just me, and I'm really actually quite self-conscious about it. But it's often the case that a couple of students will tell me midway in that stop, start, continue, or at the end of the semester in a very kindly written email, how much they appreciate that 10 minutes of chatting or those quiet moments that I create in the middle of my class for a break where we just kind of have like a totally unrelated conversation about nothing stressful, which is hard these days. Um, but yeah, just try and make it clear that like everyone here is valued. We're all here at our own stage in life. We all learn at our own pace and in our own ways. And, comparing yourself to other people isn't going to help you. And we got to support one another. So let's do this together. We're in this together, everybody. So let's have fun, kind of thing. I just try and pump that vibe into the classroom, and I don't know. It apparently works. I'm usually still the one that's on camera going rah rah rah. We're the greatest. Let's do this. But it seems like it comes out after in messages later on. I don't necessarily see it because they're all behind their screens right now. But the reports are that that sense of community is there because of that vibe, I guess. I love this question because my courses were structured in a way that made flipping online really, really easy because they're consultative and coaching and mentor focused in nature, right? Most of the content can be consumed online. And then I still review the things to give students an opportunity to clarify anything or ask any questions and the like. Um, I have been exclusively using Microsoft Teams for my classroom. I use the general channel for hosting classes, and then I upload the recordings to MS Streams. And then I make specific channels. This is really the way I use Teams. I make specific channels for asking questions about assignments, or a lot of my classes are about gathering business requirements. And so I will role play a client and I'll have a specific channel for that where the students have to ask questions directed at the client. And I answer as out to lunch as I possibly can to try and mimic someone who really doesn't know anything. Um, and my main reason though is private channels. Group work is something that is right throughout our program, and it's always contentious, like it is in any learning environment. Um, and one of the key problems that I think a lot of professors experience with that, and it keeps us up at night, is like holding people accountable, right? You've got that group member that doesn't show up, doesn't contribute, and often the students don't tell us until it's too late or something, or there's conflict within the group and we never hear about it until it's just exploding, and then you've got these email chains between competing factions, and it's not a great situation to be in. But with going online and then utilizing Teams, I saw this opportunity like, wait, I have this collaborative platform. I can create a private channel. I can put the students in that for their groups. And then I have professionalism rubrics associated in my classes where part of it is participation, collaboration, and working well with others and things like that. And you can observe that in the classroom pretty easily and take note, and when it comes time, they do the self-assessment and we have a little conversation about it and come to an agreement on what they did and what they deserved. And putting it into this online realm, when the students buy into it, those channels are just filled with engagement in these groups. And so I can see who's participating and who's not, and whether they come to me or not. Like I'll go through every day and look at, who's not showing up. And before the group ever comes to me, I'll reach out to that individual person, just say, hey, just checking up, I notice you're not very active in the channel, and I just want to make sure that things are okay. And, you know what you need to do. And is there anything I can do to support you or like connect you with the group or whatever? This just sort of gives me more opportunities to sort of see what's going on, and then both support the students in terms of maintaining a cohesive and constructive group effort, which is just teachable moment after teachable moment, while at the same time, they're using those spaces to create documents, to create the work in draft and collaborate with one another, and it's hosted there. So I tell them, if you make an edit, tag me. And every morning I go into Teams and I go through my notifications and I go into each place I have a little note and I look at whatever work it is that they've tagged me on. And I sit there and I write out a bulleted list of feedback for them. And then other times, if it's been really quiet and they haven't tagged me in a while, I'll go through and I'll just sort of start looking at stuff. And if I see something that's really good, I'll highlight it, I'll point it out, say, this is excellent, don't change this, this is exactly why, blah, blah, blah. And then I'll look for other things where, well, okay, I see where you're going here. I just want to, draw your attention to this particular resource that should give you a better guiding light on sort of what this should look like. And ultimately, by adopting teams in this situation, I have been able to give more formative feedback, more constructive feedback, a higher volume of feedback than I've ever been able to do, ever. Like there's just physically impossible to give this amount of feedback in sort of the older paradigm. So that's working really well for me, and the results kind of seem to speak for themselves. Like once my students get it, the majority of them really, really like it. Of course, there's no silver bullet, right? There's not one solution that suits everybody, and some people are still very apprehensive about engagement, regardless of how safe you make it feel. They have their own reasons, and that's fine. And that still gives me an opportunity to see that and then make a connection and see what I can do to accommodate that person within reason and making sure they meet the requirements and stuff. But I think that adoption is one of the driving forces behind the last 3 or 4 semesters have been the highest SFQ results I've ever had in the 11 years that I've been teaching. And it's by way of that constant sort of stream of support, within the confines of the hours that I have in the week. But what have I adapted? I mean, that's an adaptation, right? An adaptation of how to manage groups and group work. And the amount of times that I've had emails or conversations with people saying, "Oh, this group member's not doing this and doing that and da da da," like out of the blue, has completely vanished. And now I'm completely up on things, and it's given me the evidence and objective sort of reasoning to sometimes split groups up or bring people together. Sometimes people leave. The last couple of years, people have had good reason to drop out midstream, and that might leave a group shorthanded or a couple of groups shorthanded, and I can bring them together, and I can sort of see how much effort coming from each person. And so if I have to reform groups, I can try and build them into, okay, I've got a good subset of skills here, and I've got a good balance of skills here, rather than sort of stacking one group with a bunch of really good students by accident and putting a bunch of students that maybe could use a stronger student in the mix there. I'd say that's probably the biggest adaptation is how I manage groups and group work like that. Yeah, but MS Teams all the way. I hope that we use this thing forever, even when we go back face to face. Provided it's still accessible to us, I am 100% going to be using MS Teams for that reason, especially. I mean, I'm still, in the first third or half of my career, right? So take what you will. But after about 11 years, I've decided that your students' perception of you really matters. And you don't have to be their friend. And like, I'm not my student's friend. That's not how I see it. And that's not the kind of relationship that I cultivate with them. You don't have to be their friend, but you also don't have to be their enemy. And it's really easy to make yourself their enemy without you even knowing it. If you think that your students don't want to engage with your class, it might be you. And I say that from experience. You've got to connect. I've got a great book called that. You've got to connect. Check it out. You have to, and to connect, you have to organize and behave in a way that fosters a supportive professional connection, right? Tough love, or this is the harsh reality I'm preparing you for. Like all of these students have a full life ahead of them where they're going to get to figure that out and experience it. And I don't think that now is the best time, as it doesn't really do anything to improve their learning. In fact, I think that the sort of I need to be harsh with you because the world is harsh in an educational environment is a very unnecessary barrier. I'm pretty sure everybody knows that life is hard. And there's, like I said, there's plenty of opportunity for them to experience that. And I don't think they need me to make that a part of this experience. My job is to help them learn some content and develop, professional skills. And that kind of resiliency is something that I don't think falls within our purview. So if you do that, you might want to reflect on that and see if maybe that's not the best approach and find a different way.